All right. So this morning, the topic that I mentioned last week and actually 2 weeks ago, and we've been trying to get a little bit more substance and substantive information behind that. And it's around the right to vote and around the importance of defending the vote. And with us this morning is a gentleman who is, as I say so often, sleeves rolled up and elbows deep in the process. And that's Brian Lemek, who's the executive director and founder of Defend the Vote. Brian, good morning and welcome to Choose Views.
Richard, thank you so much.
Glad that you're with us. This is, I know where I'm going to start, but I know there's so much that I want to just like throw at you and say, come on, Brian, help us out here. But first and foremost, what I'd like to do is have you let folks know a little bit about Defend the Vote and about the work specifically that you're dealing with right now. I know we're going to get into talking about the SAVE Act and how that's going to impact so many women. But first, let folks know a little bit about Defend the Vote.
Absolutely. So our mission is really not complicated, though the work is. We're fighting to preserve our most valuable American rights and really the freedom to vote. And we just want to make sure that all Americans' voices are heard. So how do we do that? Well, we're prioritizing the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, the Freedom to Vote Act. We're prioritizing funding our elections through HAVA election security grants. And we really are just working toward this comprehensive pro-democracy bills that address those core challenges that undermine the democracy. So we do it through our 501c4 Defend the Vote Action Fund. And we also do it through our Political Action Committee, Defend the Vote, where we invested over $7.5 million last cycle for pro-democracy candidates and pro-democracy efforts, including get out the vote efforts and including voter registration drives.
Like you said, it's simple, but the work is challenging and definitely a heavy lift. You've also been deeply involved in stopping gun violence with the pact that you put together. Talk about that for a bit.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So Stop Gun Violence PAC is a new endeavor of ours, about 2 years in the making now. And we're doing it's a very similar mission. We're prioritizing pro-gun violence prevention candidates for Congress, many in Illinois as well, some real champions there, Robin being one of them. We're looking toward bringing the issue back into the spotlight. What we've all witnessed, especially in D.C., is there's been so much happening that key issues like gun violence prevention have kind of lost their footing and aren't prioritized in the same way that we'd like to see. But one component of that, which we can also tie to democracy, is the reality that, without a strong democracy, we can't prioritize issues like gun violence prevention. With the money and politics play that we see corporations, we see the gun lobby, we see other enterprises and lobbyists putting money, millions and billions of dollars toward that issue, toward the pro-gun movement that is really suppressing the voice of all Americans, which we know 90% want background checks, right? Yeah. How is it that 90% of Americans want something that's not happening? So you can see the tie there between democracy and gun violence prevention and the need to secure both.
And what's interesting is, and I don't know if you've seen the clip, if you've seen the coverage, Pam Bondi was, yep. You know where I'm going. And this, it's sort of a weird conversation. Part of the big pushback from the previous two Democratic administrations when it comes to gun legislation was that Barack Obama's coming to take your guns. The black guy's coming to take your guns. You heard all the garbage. You heard all the noise. And then when we elected Joe Biden to the office, Joe Biden's going to come take your guns. I've got friends that are gun owners here in Illinois that have said, yeah, Chew, I get it, man, but, I'm just worried they're going to try to come take my guns. I'm like, look, you lost your damn mind. They're not going to take your guns. It's about gun violence prevention. So the irony of all this is the people who stood behind folks' right to own, or their Second Amendment right, let's put it that way, have been the Democrats actually at the end of the day. And now Pam Bondi, and I'll let you take this and run with it. Pam Bondi sits with Donald Trump to talk about what they want to try to do when it comes to taking folks' guns. You saw that, right?
The irony is it's overwhelming, right? And I'll say this just on the topic of Democrats wanting to take guns. I run a pro-gun violence prevention organization, and I run a pro-democracy organization. About 10 minutes before I called in, I was texting with a member of Congress, a Democrat, about going shooting on Saturday morning. Right? Hunting is a part of my life. Firearms are a part of my life, which is exactly why I recognize the dangers and the harms when not safely stored. Why I recognize, and so many others, Democrats and Republicans, recognize that not everyone should have access to these firearms, and we just want to keep them out of the hands of all people we can agree should not have them. Right? Not a complicated concept. So that's kind of where we are. And as far as if we got inside the mind of Donald Trump and Pam Bondi, I don't know if we would ever get out alive, right? So I cannot even comprehend where they're going with this, except the irony and the hypocrisy is just overwhelming with them both. So what I can say from our movement and what we're trying to do is keep guns out of the hands of people we all agree should not have them, right? And allow the sportsmen and the enthusiasts to act responsibly by safely storing, keeping them out of the hands of children, keeping them out of the hands of people that are having particular issues, focus on red flag laws, some of these common sense solutions that we all agree on, but simply cannot get passed.
Yeah, I also think that the assault weapons ban is one, and I don't know where you stand on that, but take a moment and just share where you are in that space.
I think ban is a terrifying word for people to hear, right?
Okay.
The moment you hear ban, all of a sudden it's arms up, no way, right? If we could put the language in a better way and talk about how ending the manufacturing of new assault-style weapons, right? So semi-automatic is a confusing term.
Right.
I hunt with a semi-automatic shotgun, right? It carries 5 rounds, 5 shells, but because of laws, especially around duck hunting, I'm limited. I have to put 3 shells in it, right? Mm-hmm. So the ducks are better protected than most Americans are, number one. Number two, that particular firearm, it's a semi-automatic. It's just simply how the gun loads and fires, right? Now, if we look at M4-style platforms, right, the AR-15-style firearm, we look at the capacity of the rounds, right, looking at, some of them can carry have the capacity for hundreds. We have really good laws that are supposed to keep it to 10, but that's a real reality there that we need to focus on. So let's not talk about, particular banning, right? Like, let's focus on a little bit deeper there too, right? So, because the moment you talk about ban, you lose a lot of sportsmen, and it's a word that confuses, and it's a word that I don't particularly like using either. I just want to make sure that kids don't get murdered anymore, right?
Yep. And I think a lot of times that this is the language that we all can unfortunately fall susceptible to or be susceptible to using without understanding who it's going to impact. So I'm in agreement with you on that the word it needs the law that is surrounding this needs to be changed so that it geo targets and specifically targets what the problem is. And once we get that in place in terms of how the language should be written, then, or how the legislation should be written, then I think we're going to be able to make some moves. But we also have a lot of pushback from the gun lobby in that space, which I know that you deal with face forward all the time. Let's go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
No. It doesn't matter what it is. They want to fight you on it. Yeah. Right. So safe storage is everyone agrees to safely store your firearm.
Yeah.
Right. And they want to push back on that too. So
common sense. All right. Let's shift to not a bigger topic, but a big A topic right now when it comes to Defend the Vote and the SAVE Act. And a lot of people don't even know what this means and what it's attempting to do. So take a moment if you can and explain as best you can. And we've got time for you to kind of break down what this is all about and what it could mean if this were to be enacted.
So at face value, it is a comprehensive voter suppression bill. That's really what it is. And it's designed to block tens of millions of eligible Americans from voting, and it's going to cost us tens of billions of dollars. Right? That's the baseline of what it is. And really what it's doing is when you want to register to vote, now think about if you've moved recently since your last vote, if you've been married since your last vote, if you've had any changes at all since your last vote, you have to re-register. I could move across the street. I have to re-register. I get married. I have to re-register under my new name, right? This bill is now requiring a passport or a certified birth certificate presented in person. It's really just proof of citizenship to show that you are an American, a United States citizen, right? So the issue that we face here, too, is that more than 21 million Americans lack those documents, right? They lack the original birth certificate. They lack the passport. 140 million plus Americans don't have passports, right? You need those particular documents to show that you're a United States citizen under the SAVE Act. Now, this is going to hurt millions of Americans, but it's going to hurt military service members, Native Americans, voters of color, rural voters, low-income Americans, and married women, right? So a married woman, her birth certificate does not match her name. That presents a challenge.
Presuming she changed her name.
Presuming she changed her name. Thank you for that clarification. Presuming she changed her name, that will cause an issue for her because her name no longer matches what's on her birth certificate. And if she doesn't have a passport, then she cannot, under the SAVE Act, register to vote. And then her vote and her voice is no longer heard.
And then we're even further assuming that the passport is the name, and this is where it gets confusing. Is it her birth name or is it her married name?
Yeah.
And so
that's a lot of the confusion there too.
Yeah, Brian, let me ask you this question. You said earlier it's going to cost a tremendous amount of money, and normally I get it, but I'm going to show my blind side here. Help us understand why it's going to cost so much money.
All right, so 146 million Americans do not have a passport. At $130 per passport, that cost would exceed $19 billion for Americans, just simply trying to exercise their right to vote. So Illinois, here's a good example. Illinois, 3.2 million people, more than half, 57%, don't have a passport. That's $416 million, too. Now, I talked about it hurting people of color, people, low-income communities, et cetera. Tell me what you're going to do if you're a family in Chicago and you have the option to spend $130 on a passport so you can get your vote in, or put gas in the tank, put food on the table, right? Never mind potential likelihood that you have to take the day off to get the passport, and then you have to take the day off again to register to vote because you have to do it in person. So what is this doing here to those voices? It is simply suppressing their ability to vote, and it's suppressing their ability to be heard. And these are the very people, whose votes matter the most, that need to be heard the most, right? These are the people that are held down by the corporations. These are the people that are directly impacted by gun violence, directly impacted by suppressing rights on women's reproductive rights, rather. So these are the people that need it the most. And it is them that has put the most pressure on and have to go through the most hoop for our fundamental right to vote. Something now that you can mail in, something now you can do online.
And that's where I was going to head with this. There's a couple of things that pop up. One, this is a voting tax. This is a poll tax, rather. It's plain and simple. It's a poll tax. One, so it's gone from counting the jelly beans or the marbles in a jar. That those of you who know your history know what I'm talking about as a rite of passage to be able to vote. One. Secondly, in terms of the mail piece of this, so renewing your passport, you can do that online. However, to have that then be tied to your voting registration, you got to go do that face to face. So there's one step that you can do essentially online, but it still doesn't go back for women to the name issue. And the other group that you probably, I know you studied this part of it in terms of the numbers, someone that is just getting out of high school, that just turns 18, and they haven't registered to vote yet at all. And let's say that they never, their parents have their I'm just drawing a blank. They have their birth certificate. They're 1,000 miles away in college, so they don't have their birth certificate to then register to vote in another state because they have to because they're in another state. So that takes out a whole group of people there that are new voters. Am I right, or am I going off in the wrong direction here?
No. I mean, it's registration and re-registration, right? You're absolutely correct. So it's this whole new class of voters that we have coming in, people turning 18 years old that have to go through that process of registering to vote, and they also are suppressed here. Right? And that's just allowing that they can vote in the state where they go to school, right? The state rules are different everywhere.
Right.
But yeah, no, absolutely. That's a whole other class of folks that we are marginalizing here.
Well, I'm not sure if you are familiar with the producer and writer Greg Palast, and he's been talking about the voter suppression for a long time. He's done a couple of movies in that space, and we've had him on as a guest on our show. But the one thing that he points out is that voter suppression isn't just always the face-forward things that are being done or taking people off voter rolls. It's the things like this that are systemic, that are going to be part of law in on a federal level, which is ironic because I thought voter registration and voting was a state, so this is where, as much as this administration is trying to say we want to keep, let me back up, that GOP voices have said we want to keep government out of your stuff. This is a sledgehammer of contradiction to keeping the federal government out of your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no, absolutely. I mean, it's federal bill.
Yeah, and that to me is an overreach into the states. And so our states, are you getting any, where I'm going with this is, are you getting any information, any data, any pushback from states that are saying that doesn't this contradict what our systems have been in terms of federal to state and state to federal?
Well, first, we're focusing really on just the federal component of it right now. We're looking at the bill at that level. I mean, Chip Roy introduced this thing in the 118th. He's introducing it again. It's got over 100 sponsors and co-sponsors. And so, the idea here is that these representatives think that this is right for their state, but what they're doing is placating Donald Trump here, right? That's really what we're seeing here. So everything we're trying to do is to, again, just safeguard our elections and end this suppression and this disenfranchisement of millions of voters. Right. So our attempt and our approach is to do it at the federal level, and that's really where we're focused right now, too.
Yeah, I got it. Well, listen, Brian, thanks for being with us, man. We're going to definitely have, this already, going to have you back because this is another one of these ongoing issues that is major overreach by this current administration and not enough pushback from elected representatives. So we appreciate you being with us this morning, and we hope to have you back. How can folks find you? How can folks potentially get involved or at least just send you an email saying, Brian, thanks for the work that you're doing?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, you. WeDefendTheVote.org, right? That's the action. WeDefendTheVote.org. That is our website. You can find out what we're doing. You can see who we endorse. We can see what legislation we're focused on, and you can, learn a lot more about us there.
Absolutely. That's been great to hear from you and talk with you this morning. I know that you got you're busy all the time fighting the good fight. So thank you for taking time to be with us. We'll have you back in the future, Brian. But in the meantime, stay safe and stay focused. We appreciate you.
All right, Drew. Thank you so much. Keep fighting.
All right, man. You too. Be well.